Welcome everybody to our August 2022 version of our LMEA 12 for 12. You can see the excitement in my face. We have such an incredible amount of people on the screen right now. We have educators and musicians from all around the state of Louisiana talking about this great thing we call gospel music. So the session title is Amen, the Effects of Gospel Music in the Music Classroom. First person I want to introduce is our DEI Chairman, Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion. Mr. James Square, would you please introduce yourself and kind of talk about first how you feel the importance of such a topic like this is to our Louisiana music educators?
Sure. Hi, I'm James Square. I live here in Ponchatoula. I'm a retired band director by trade. I took these off because there's a lot of glare. Gospel music is something that, I grew up on it, became Catholic, but still I go back to those gospel roots because it just touches my spirit. One of the things that I think that is important for us as music educators is in our classroom, we want to bring students in an environment where it reaches their soul. We can do that like no other teachers at school. And within our LMEA organization, one of the things that we're looking at the past couple of years that, it's been, kind of overlooked in the past, but we're really making some strides in bringing everyone into the fold. Diversity means everyone is invited. That equity means we give resources where they are needed. And inclusion means, hey, you're at the table, you're at the dance, but don't stand over there on the wall all night. Get out here on the floor, dance with us, sing with us. So it is great that we're opening up this gospel pathway. So Brett, I'll turn it back over to you.
Thanks, man. And I like what you said, that it's being inclusive. I talked to a lot of people, as we're introducing gospel, we're trying to introduce Cajun Zydeco music and brass bands and rock bands. One of the big things, there's a little bit of fear, is that some of those students might be taken away from our traditional ensemble. And my experience is a little different than that, right? We want to be inclusive. And I think some of these students are different than your traditional student, where they don't feel included in your traditional ensemble. And this gives them a pathway to participate. Or if I introduce gospel music to students or a gospel ensemble, maybe I can now incorporate that into my traditional ensemble to have a well-rounded music program, right? And that's the kind of thing that we're trying with LMEA, to be more inclusive in that regard. And our good friend Clark Joseph, a lot of people know him around the country, around the world. Mr. Clark Joseph, would you please just express your passion and your personal story about gospel music and how important this topic is to you, my friend?
Wow, well, I am so excited to be here and be a part of this panel. Yes, I'm Clark Joseph, originally from Lafayette, graduate of USL, now UL Lafayette, was a piano performance major. And so I did the whole classical program, bachelor and master's programs. But I never lost sight of what I was brought up on, and that was gospel music. The reason why I was able to play classical is because I played gospel. I had a strong left hand as a result of playing gospel. And so when I got to the classical part, playing the scales with the left hand and the arpeggios, I was able to do it because of my experience in gospel. And gospel music is simply the good news of Jesus. But more than that, the music itself lends itself to all kinds of music qualities that can be taught in the classroom, from rhythm, from syncopation, from harmony, all of that. And I know teachers are always preparing their students for contest sight reading. Using the hymn book is a great tool to teach sight reading. You have your rhythm, you have your harmony, you have 4 parts. And so there are a number of ways that you can utilize gospel music. And very quickly, I'll just say, it's not just one style of gospel music. There are many different styles. There's traditional, there's contemporary, there's praise and worship, there's urban contemporary, there's even rap. I was a part of a conference last month in Atlanta I oversaw the children's new music division. And there was a rap piece that was phenomenal. I mean, it was a hit. We had a children's choir that performed at the end of the session. They received a standing ovation. So you can utilize all of the different forms of gospel music. It's not just one. It's not just for the church, but it's for the classroom. It's for the world. It's for the mall. It's for wherever you go. You can hear it at the bowling alley. It's everywhere. And so I'll close with this. I think it's one of the greatest styles of music out there.
Clark, that's great. That's something that I didn't hear before. And I love for other people right now to chime into this. You mentioned there are other forms of gospel music, and immediately I went and I don't live in the gospel music world like you guys do, but I've been introduced to it, and it's on my playlist all the time, right? And good friend Kenel Williams introduced me to a lot, who's on this screen right now, introduced me to a lot of gospel music that I listen to now. And I think, okay, Richard Smallwood is not Kirk Franklin, but we still consider those two avenues to be gospel music, right? Can you elaborate on that a little bit? Because my mind is trying to go places where I don't even know where to go about how many forms of gospel music can there be, and why is it always called just gospel music?
Right. So, are you wanting me to expound on
Yeah,
that?
you, anybody, because this is a fascinating topic to me right now. Kenel, you want to chime in with that?
I'll say this.
Go ahead, Clark. Finish.
Gospel music is ever evolving. So it started out as the hymns, the anthems, and the spiritual songs, and then it moved into the traditional sound, and then the contemporary sound. But it is ever evolving, and so as we are speaking now, somebody is composing something that doesn't really sound like the traditional sound. It doesn't sound like contemporary. So it's constantly growing. And the different avenues, the different styles of gospel music. You mentioned Richard Smallwood, who he is the master of blending classical with the traditional and the contemporary sound, lending itself to orchestrations. Kirk Franklin, on the other hand, is urban contemporary. So where most students will be playing some type of rap music, blasting it in their cars, Kirk Franklin has offered an alternative. And he has the same style, but with a different flair, a different flavor, a different mode as far as text. So yeah, it is wide, it is open. I'll let Kenel take it from there.
Yes, I definitely agree. And because gospel music has so many facets and so many avenues, it can literally really reach every age group. It literally can do that from the young to the old, the Black to the white. It just has something for everybody. I'm a part of a non-denominational church where I'm the minister of music there, and my congregation is a mixed congregation, mixed in color, mixed in age. So therefore, when I bring gospel music, because I have so many, the table of contents is kind of endless, I'm able to reach everyone in the church.
So Kenel, you don't have a modern service and a traditional or a traditional service, right? You're more of a blended service that tries to reach everybody.
Yes, that is correct. Yes. Now, I came from a traditional service where it was almost one way, but now I'm in a service where we got two ways, we got highways, we got tunnels, we got, we're just kind of reaching everybody, and it's just so much. It's so much fun, and I definitely can applaud Clark, because I kind of went the same avenue as far as classical music and being able to bridge those two, you know, with gospel music. So each one kind of lend an ear or lend a hand to each other. So it just made it real easy and real comfortable for me.
Francis, I'm gonna turn it over to you next. You know, I tell a lot of people this. When I was growing up, I grew up in a Cajun family, and I love stories. You know, them old Cajun women, man, they like to tell stories, and a lot of times it was in French, and I didn't understand it, but there was just something about the storytelling that I was real attracted to. You know, my cousins were outside riding bikes in the neighborhood and playing outside, and I was in the kitchen. I just remember being in the kitchen real young, just being in there and just, you know, listening to stories. You
Right.
just before we set this record button tonight, you came with the story that I didn't know about you, and that was your pathway to gospel was not from your youth. Can you share that story and then kind of bridge that into how you incorporated that into your teaching career?
Yes, basically, as I mentioned before, I was not familiar with gospel music until I got to USL, now known as Clark said, UL. I'm a self-taught pianist, but I always enjoyed the classical music. And then from there, I had friends of mine, I would listen to people like Clark and a dear friend of mine, Sylvia Richard, who was another phenomenal pianist. And matter of fact, it got to the point where Sylvia would say, "Can you please go somewhere else so I could practice?" And I was just in awe of this wonderful music. Matter of fact, my first experience was listening to Sylvia was playing Walter Hawkins, A Change. And just to listen to her play this, and it just drew me in. And then as, you know, time went by, they had the gospel choir at USL, directed by Clark, and to listen to all of this beautiful music happening, it was just unbelievable. And, you know, I, like Kenel, brought this into I'm a classically trained vocalist. So yes, I would do the opera. Then when I would get back to my church, I incorporated, and I come from a traditional Catholic church. And I incorporated that slowly until where you go, yes. Now, my left hand is not strong like Clark and Kenel's, but I try to imitate all the instrumentations that I would hear and still sing. And, you know, I do this in my class still today, where I tell the kids, look, do your favorite music. See how you get excited about it. Well, gospel music does the same thing. I approach it when I'm teaching it. I approach my gospel music the same way I approach my classical music. Teach them the text. Make sure that they understand the text. Teach them the rhythms. And then when we start to put everything together, teach them how to listen to one another. Teach them how to express what they're feeling. And then it just all flows together.
Francis, would that be the underlying theme of what gospel music really is the text rather than the style?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes,
You
I
could say that.
And you know, last time we met, there were several times where my whole body just got the chills. And because of not the rhythm of the music, not the syncopation, all that, because of who we're talking about, that's where the power and the goosebumps come from.
Yes.
There's just a lot of power, you know, when you talking about Jesus and what he's done and how he did it, and it just, the list just goes on and on. Once you do that, then you've tapped into something that the average person really can't handle.
And really, to continue what Kenel was saying, the difference between gospel music and classical, because, you know, like the Messiah, a great piece of work. But let's be honest, it was written with restrictions. This is how you should behave. This is how you should accept it. But with the gospel music, and Clark mentioned that earlier, it breaks away from those restrictions. It allows you to get excited. Like right now, I've got goosebumps just talking about it. It allows you to be more expressive. It gives you, again, as was mentioned earlier, a license.
The risk.
Yeah.
Freedom.
Exactly.
Yeah, imagine
Not
the
to
top
take away-
soprano in the
Right.
Messiah just going off, right?
Yeah.
Can't do it. No.
And you know, there's an arrangement of the Hallelujah chorus. You know, you got your traditional one, and then they got the one called a Soulful Celebration.
Celebration, yes.
And
Yes.
play both of those too. One of them is okay, and the other one kind of just shakes you up.
Yes.
Right.
So Francis, when I've heard you sing, we've performed together a few times.
Yes.
Do you find when you're singing classical that you're now, because you've had the gospel experience, that has crept into some of your classical singing?
Oh, there's no.
Or can you turn it on and off?
Well, within reason,
Yeah.
because my approach to the classical and the gospel is the same. Sing and feel, or I should say, emote what you feel. You can do the same thing. Now, once in a while, when I'm doing the classical stuff, I will slip in and like
And go gospel.
Put the slides in there. You put those slides in there.
slip in.
Look at Sasha. She knows true. You put the slides in there.
You know,
I gotta do it too.
slide it in.
I did. Margaret Daniels forced that me many times. Okay.
Yeah.
So Juanita, I know you're about to come
Fran-
off the screen and you praise it in the back and hands are raising. I
sure
see you
am.
singing songs. You have an interesting story as well, because you've come from a band background, right?
Correct.
And then found your way into the choral classroom for many years. I'd like you to talk about that transition. And then the last time we met a couple weeks ago, man, it was just, it still resonates with me today on how your introduction to your students of gospel led you to teach other forms of music and different nationalities that you felt was important to your students. Can you kind of talk about that in your own way?
When I was asked to take over a choir program, and because somebody else needed the band program so they can work on their certification, that I said, wow, I'm about to branch off. I'm about to go into a risky area. But I want to give props to Yvette Weber. When I met her in 1996, I had the opportunity. This is what we did as the choir, and at the time I was the band director. We would listen to each other's groups before we went to district assessment. The band, I would take my top band over to her top choir class, and I had the kids take notes. And then she would do a sight singing exercise, and the band kids' eyes were raised, because when she's solfeging, they said, Miss Hall, how can they sing from her hands? How do you hear that? I said, just like French horns and trombones hear pitch, just like my brass players hear pitch, they do the same thing. But nobody's making a sound. They're going to sing that? I said, yes. And I had the opportunity to get that help. And I was grateful to her for that. But when I had to branch off myself, Fran Abair came to my rescue. My first year walking into the sight reading for choir for district assessment, I went horns up. She said, no. I went, do. Look, I said, Kenel looking at me like, So,
Oh, yeah.
here I am. Look, Lord have mercy, how Kenel. But I had to transform band thinking to vocal thinking. I had to take the mechanical instrument and turn it to the vocal, the God-given instrument. I just had to change my whole outlook from being a band director. I thank God for the choir directors that helped me in Lafayette Parish and to help transition me. Now, can I walk in the band room and tell you about your horns, phrasing, and everything else? Yes, I can. But now as a choir director, I was able to do a lot of things that even as a band director, I was restricted from. Because with vocal music, you can do things. You can make a voice do things that even a horn cannot do. And
Right,
I'm
that's right.
your horn cannot, your trumpet players cannot articulate accented words. They accent pitch, but they can't accent words. So when a child is going, say aba mu la, that's a different thing. You can't do that with a horn. You can have them accent articulate. They can get it torn. But when you're singing and you have to express that, that's different.
And that's the text again, right? We come back to text, no matter what
Go back
it
to
is.
we go back to text. And another thing I want to also share with you was that my students who came from a lot of gospel and came from that, they shared theirs too. I started having talent Fridays. So my students would come in and guess what songs they're singing? Gospel songs. They would bring in artists. Like I tried to get Corinne Hawthorne before I retired. I tried to get Corinne Hawthorne to come and do a Zoom with me because she's from Abbeville.
That's right.
Corinne Hawthorne is a well-known contemporary artist. She is the bomb. I even sing her stuff. And I tried to get her to come in. The kids came in with other artists. They came in with Tamla Mann. They came in with everything. And I was just impressed by my students listening more to gospel. So being classically trained, also myself, I had to humble myself, like Francis, I had to humble myself. And I had to say, you know what? I owe it to my students to not only introduce them to gospel and to know how important, because I'm going to tell you this much. When we were saying gospel in our class, I had no confusion. And anytime there was confusion, even if they had a fight in the hallway, the students would come in, Miss Hall, let's do Shout Hallelujah, please. And let's sing this song, please. Because and they would tell me, Miss Hall, the enemy is busy. Can we please start off with some gospel in class so we can get that spirit out? And we would do that, even if we had to hum, we would do that. And that gave me the opportunity. And so I introduced my students to multiple artists, not only African-American artists, but artists from all over, that they had the opportunity. They loved African music. They love multicultural. They love Bonsiaba. They love Tutakwinda. They loved different songs like that. But when I brought in different artists, when I brought in Kirk Franklin, I would do that, and I would have all these different artists. They really, really enjoyed that. It because gospel spreads across all nationalities. Amen. It spreads across. It is not just generic. It's not generic, y'all. Gospel music is not generic. So one day I got in class and my students said, well, Miss Hall, you can't sing gospel. I said, yes, I can, And one day I was fussing and I went, Holy Spirit, dwell in me, rest my soul and set me free. And they looked at me like I was black or something. I said, no, I'm not. Cortez is black. I'm mocha. All right, but God, you can tell you I told them that. There's a lie. But I did, and they looked at me, Miss Hall, we didn't know you had it in you. But I had a student, she would shut it down in class, shut it down. If she shut it down so much with that gospel, the assistant principal would sit in my room. She said, I'm tired of breaking up these fights. I need to come up in here, Miss Hall, where I can get some peace. And would come to my class, and she would always come. And I would email and say, we're doing gospel today. Miss Hall, I'm on my way for your observation. Yeah. Now, she wasn't observing me, but she needed to come in there to be encouraged. So I said, here is my opportunity to bring music to my students, all my students, even my music elective students. I would bring gospel. They would ask me, Miss Hall, can we do gospel? So I would find a gospel bucket drumming piece. So I would play it with them. And they, especially, I think it's Kirk Franklin's, is Stomp. I would do Stomp by Kirk Franklin. you know, and I would just do it. Or if they walk through the door, my music elective kids, I would do I Smile by Kirk Franklin, and the kids would come in singing it, you know. It's when my Hispanic kids do it in Spanish, and I go, yeah, I'm kind of lost, but y'all just go ahead on and do you, you know, as long as you're not saying something else. But as long as you're not saying something else. But I'm just, when I became a choir director, Brett, it changed me. It really changed me. It really did. It changed me greatly as a band director. And I told the choir directors I have all respect for them, but gospel music covers the whole world. It covers everybody. It's not generic.
As Juanita, as an instrumentalist, and I am, what changes me as an instrumentalist is performing in gospel type music ensembles, or a Christmas program, or jazz or big band, something that fits outside. And I love playing classical. I'm classically trained, and I love playing classical. But there is something about performing with expression, right? Because you're playing and you're understanding the text, and there it goes again. You're understanding what they're singing about it. You're not trying to find meaning into something that is false, right? You're making up meaning or trying to find expression where it's not written in the first place. Experienced teachers can do things that young teachers cannot. So I'm going to bring this up because I think this is important. And Francis, I want you to try to answer this, or anybody else. I think, Francis, you might have had more experience with this, or somebody else, but we're talking a couple of things that might be considered bad words in public school systems. God, Jesus Christ, Christian, biblical text. As a young teacher, or somebody who might be in a situation where they want to introduce it, but might fear, right? Be fearful of that, or fearful of their job. How do you introduce something like that and not really get away with it, but knowing that it's important to the social emotional learning of the student, that it's important that we want them to have a well-rounded music education, and that you know what it does for the kid when they get introduced to that. So Francis, how would you, or we need to answer this too, how do you introduce that but still have a job at the end of the day?
I'm gonna tell you what. Let me share with me and I'm gonna let Francis go. I'm gonna go fast. I'm gonna tell you what I did. Did my Lord deliver Daniel 1 year for district? And some of my students started laughing. I said, hold up, because students asked me, well, Miss Hall, who are we singing about and who was Daniel? So what I did was, in my lesson plan, I told my principal I was copying my Bible from the King James Version. And I said, I have students who don't know about this text. And so I'm using my Bible to teach the story about this song. My principal, because I explained it and I broke it down and told him in that way, he said, Miss Hall, it is all good because you're actually using the story to teach the song. In the process, I went through the whole text about Daniel with my students. And what I did was I had them open their music. And when they said, did my Lord deliver Daniel? And when they went, oh, Miss Hall, I understand now why he was delivered. Why it's important to emphasize this text right here in the music. And that's what I did. In the process, there were students who said, Miss Hall, now I know how to sing this song. When we went to state with that song, one of the judges says, these kids are singing this last song like they really know it, like they really know they made the comment. One of the judges made the comment and they said, Miss Hall, we're singing this song, we know, because we now know the truth behind the song. And now we can sing it with the emphasis and the style and everything that they needed to do it. But that's how I went about it. So if a young teacher wanted to do that, they can break it down like that and tell them the reason behind it and explain it and why it is important for them to comprehend the text and be able to expressively sing that song.
Amen.
Hey, Francis, how did you incorporate that or grow into introducing that with your students?
I don't want to say anything. Juanita said what I had to say. No, I'm joking.
Oh, I love you.
Another thing, if you go back and look at traditional choral music, 95% of it is sacred.
Right.
So you don't have to worry about, okay, we can't teach, we have to keep religion and state separate.
Right.
And let them know that you're not teaching religion. You're following the format that has been designed by those before us. And you do, as Juanita emphasized, you do the text. And then you come back, because without the text, you have no understanding. You're just, as we would say in church, a noisy gong. If you don't know what you're singing about and feel what you're singing about, but then you come back and teach them the notes. And how do you put the two together? Earlier, you asked me if sometimes when singing my classical, does gospel slip in? And I told you, yes, it does. A perfect example of that was about a year or two ago, we did, along with the Acadiana Symphony, Maestro Smoley asked me to do some spirituals. And yes, it was classically written and everything. And then he says, okay, that's good, but can you do more? In other words, he's asking me to do what I do in church.
Right.
And of course, when I started ad-libbing, you saw the biggest smile on his face. He's going, that's what I'm wanting, you know? So yes, sometimes I will slip and slide in there. But there should never be a fear of where you are crossing state from church, because you're not preaching religion. You're doing music that is meaningful past, have a good day, or helping you to just cope with the situation. Because in all forms of music, it is about what a person has experienced in his or her life. And it's just being able to express it a certain word, a way that you can relate to.
So for our young teachers out there, who take notes, because this is the kind of information you need to bring to your principal, bring to your parents, right? About justification
Right.
for introducing this to your students in your school. Ms. Sasha, you've been real quiet, and I appreciate your patience before we get to you, because I've kind of waited for this to be a surprise on this Zoom. When everybody knows in Lafayette, they say Sasha, the thing that I hear always is that Sasha can sing anything. Classical, pop, gospel. And I was like, okay. And then you hear what her job is. Sasha, can you introduce yourself? And not that it's funny, but it's real interesting that your presence here and your life is really opposite of what gospel music is, and kind of tell that story about yourself.
Well, so hello, all you young teachers trying to figure it out, and vocalists trying to figure out where you're supposed to be. My name is Sasha Massey. I'm a soprano, and I'm a professional singer, born and raised in Lafayette, Louisiana. I graduated from Ooh La La in 2009. That's what they call UL now. Anyway, okay, my background is tied a lot to my faith journey as well, but when it comes to trying to teach this music, it's important to understand that, like, the origins, even if there's people that don't acknowledge or believe that they were created, or if they just sprang into being, they're religious myth stories, just like Greek epics, just like anything else. So my grandmother was a cradle Catholic, and she grew up and she became a Jehovah's Witness. And I was raised around all kinds of different religious music, and I gravitated towards all kinds of music. I love to listen to Paganini. I love to watch the Lawrence Welk show. I mimicked Aretha Franklin and Ella Fitzgerald like I was a parrot. But here's where I am now. So I grew up and I sang as a professional musician in both Baptist and Catholic churches. I wasn't in an environment where I was invited to join the faith or learn why those weird Catholics do the things that they do until I started at Cathedral. And basically they want, with a lot of early music, like Francis said, it's about having a pure sound, pure tone. A lot of it is straight singing. But I'm a grown woman and I'm not finna do that all the time. my interest and my ability is extended toward a broad spectrum of music, and where I'm at, it would seem to be very narrow. But meeting people where they are so you can communicate to them is why I've been able to introduce more spirituals, more gospel music that is somehow appropriate for where I am, because there's still this affinity and need for things to be formal, because I sing in what is regarded as the flagship church of the diocese. But if it's supposed to only look a certain way, then it's only going to attract a certain group of people. And if it only attracts a certain group of people, then the truth behind faith being that all are welcome to be one and commune together means it stops being true. It stops being true. So like, all are welcome is a very old Catholic song, and it can't just be a song. So where I'm at, I flex a lot of my classical training, but I'm able to spread my wings and introduce some more facets of spirituals and gospel singing, because I'm kind of the only one that can do it where I am. So I do, because there's people in the congregation that miss that music. Their hearts ache for it. And for them, it's a way for them to get closer to their creator. It's a way for them to bond with the faith community better. Otherwise, church is just a building. Otherwise, it's just a place where people show off their outfits and act like it's a social club, and it's not. But for education purposes, spirituals and gospel music can't just be the showstoppers. It can't just be what opens the concert or what closes it. It can't just stop being impressive when we're in middle school, and then all of a sudden there's a meat cleaver just cut off once you get to college. It can't just stop. I finally saw that there was a category at NAS for spirituals, but it was only for one composer, because like they bought the rights to the music, something like, I don't know, something with Hall Johnson. But our music isn't just token appreciation. It's not just to satisfy a small minority of people. The reason why there aren't more Black people in voice programs is because they don't see more examples of Black composers. They don't see themselves. In the same way, I'm attracted to music about love or about faith or about what have you, all these epic stories. What I had to learn after school, after I graduated, art songs and spiritual songs in Spanish, in Russian, in Portuguese. Like, when we make room for all the people that exist, then that music will be appreciated.
That's a coffee cup right there. When we make, I've never heard it said like that before. When we make room for everybody that exists, man, we need a shirt you got in the back. We need to turn that over and print that, because that's something that need to be stamped on a lot of things that we see daily. I really like that, Sasha. I think it's great that the thing that Kenel said in his non-denominational church, right? The things that he's trying to offer and accomplish is the same thing that you're trying to accomplish in a completely different environment, right? A Roman Catholic Church, which is traditionally, right? Celtic Hallelujah might be the most feeling song that people hear on a given Sunday. You know, yes. That's just what they're exposed to. Do you feel a little, when you kind of introduce some of those extras, do you feel some kickback, or do you feel people are receptive to that?
There's people in the congregation that are very excited about it, and there's people that I work with that are actually having to play the music with me that are either very uncomfortable or very pleased and surprised to hear it. It's the same thing with whenever I was invited to do a concert with ASO out in New Iberia. Francis, he had the same reaction. I sang, God, what did I sing? Ride on King Jesus, I think it was.
Yes.
And I started cutting up, and I threw in some stuff in like the 6th octave, and I started like going way up there, and he was like, yes, that.
Yeah.
Exactly. So people responded to the stuff from the Messiah. Sure, they wanted to hear rejoice greatly, but when I got into that, that's
Do you feel, Sasha, that you're, because your job is in a kind of restricted musical environment that you need those other outlets to feed your musical self?
Yes, I do. Now what we're doing is presentational as much as it is representational. It's supposed to be entertaining. It's supposed to help people replay, to pray and self-reflect, but it's also expressing an idea. So if what's bringing the idea forward doesn't really move me, then I have to dig deeper as an interpreter of music, especially with regard to Maggie D's class about song lit. I have to dig a little deeper, and I have to figure out, okay, why does secret chervus mean something? Why do I suddenly understand more words and phrases of Latin when I've never spoken it? Where some things, like as soon as you hear them, they just come naturally. Like when you hear "They that sow in tears shall reap in joy," it tears your heart out because it's true. There's a characteristic to gospel music that also allows for more improvisation along the same lines as what you would utilize or ornament in classical pieces, because the very nature of it is improvisatory. And once you learn what's on the page, you're supposed to fill in the gaps. Composers like Harry T. Burley and composers like Moses Hogan, they write things out, but they also leave space for the person, the artist that's looking for that right interpretation, to find that perfect extraction and to get to it every time and to feel that same ecstatic, euphoric release, that cathartic release that comes from singing spirituals and gospel.
That's great. Clark, I'm gonna come back to you, man. Doing a little bit of research on gospel music in the state, I know that UL Lafayette has had a great tradition of that gospel choir. I know that LSU now has a gospel choir. I don't know how long that's been in place. What can the universities do, the choir programs, to be a little bit more inclusive and, I don't know, making it more aware that there are gospel choirs and not having the people to dig so much to find that, and just to introduce that style to your traditional choir programs in the universities? Well, what's missing?
Yes, I think just as everyone else has said, if universities would begin to look at the world music, and that includes gospel, and start to offer courses, or maybe not even a course, maybe a chapter in music history. Let that be the start, and expose the students to it. Expose the faculties, because faculties don't have that experience. So it may mean that you start on a small scale. I guarantee you, I experienced it at USL. You want to increase your enrollment, you want to get some students in your program, begin to offer what they like. And they they will come. One of the things I heard, and I really appreciate what Sasha was saying about her church, there's a respect level that she has established with them. They respect her, they appreciate her because she gives them what they like. And as a result of her giving them what they like, she can now expose them to some other things that they may not be accustomed to, but because there's a respect level there, they know who she is, they know her musical gifting, they can appreciate it. They will be open to receive it. And
so what you're saying, Clark, I don't mean to interrupt you, but so Sasha is the DJ of St. John Cathedral in Lafayette.
There you go. There you go. There you go.
Yeah.
And I experienced the same thing because I played for several Catholic churches on the weekend, 2 white, 2 blacks. And when I bring gospel music to my, what we would say predominantly white churches, it's like, I've never heard this before. And now I have them singing, shout to the Lord, and we're having church.
Mhm.
And that's including older parishioners, telling them who grew up saying, okay, you know, we don't do that in the Catholic Church. And I said, okay, everybody, get up on your feet. If you believe in this, get up on your feet. And they're joining me. And these parishioners are coming to me and say, oh, I enjoyed Mass. We have to do this again.
Imagine that. Imagine that.
Yeah. You know, because deep down, it's been in them.
Mm.
But, you know, they were raised to be, this is how you act.
Yes, how do you, yes.
Mm.
Yeah.
Yeah, Clark, finish your statement, man. You were on to
that's
I
something.
apologize, Clark.
Now we having church right now, Francis. Now we having church.
But the box, yeah, that box thinking. I'm staying in the
I think
box.
the point that I wanted to make in regards to what Sasha, her experience at the cathedral and introducing new music, the same thing can happen in the classroom. College classroom, elementary, middle school, high school. I think I said this when we met previously. When you reach the student where they are,
Or at their level.
you grip the student, then you can open up that heart and see some other things, some other styles. I'll just give a quick example on the college campus. I came there, I had studied classical, had private piano and all of that, but gospel was my forte. And so that's, I mean, on the weekends, that's what I did. And so my piano professor was like, you're either gonna play classical or you're gonna play gospel, but you will not be able to do both. I said, oh yes, I can. I'm playing classical because I have played gospel. So I finally won that battle. And I shared, when I worked on my master's, one of the questions that was asked, how do you form a gospel choir on a college campus? And that let me know that I had opened up some avenues that had not been opened before. Right. And so college campuses have to look at gospel, they have to look at jazz, they have to look at some of the other world musics and include that in their programs so that when the Hispanic student comes, when the African American student comes, when the West Indian student comes, they can identify with something, and then you can go into your traditional programs and teach the theory and teach the harmony, because you have won them by giving them what they are accustomed to hearing.
And you know, I agree with Clark. I'm gonna tell you something, but I did a Spanish piece when it was half the piece was Spanish, the other half was English. I did not teach the Spanish. It was one of my students. She actually she took the music home. She broke it down. She went to the board with it. She showed them. She helped them with every pronunciation. She did call and response with them. They said, Miss Hall, please don't do it. Take a seat. And I wasn't even embarrassed. I was a learner too. I took a seat. I wanted to make sure, because when she was absent, I had to make sure that I responded and I was able to teach it correctly. Because if I taught something wrong, they're going to say, we're going to tell so-and-so, Miss Hall, you didn't say it correctly.
That's right.
But guess what you're doing with the students? How are you empowering the students in your class? What are you doing? You're doing student-led learning.
So you were making a 4 at that point, Miss Hall. Your compass evaluation, you were a 4 all day long.
My principal walked in there. He saw me sitting down in a seat where the student sat, and the student is teaching the piece. And he's sitting there going, you kidding me? I said, and watch what's going to happen. And I got there. I started. I said, a cappella, please. We did the pitches. A cappella, please sing it. The principal looked at, I said, I don't know why you're looking at me. I'm not teaching. She's teaching. Okay, make sure she's doing it right. And she said, and she told the principal, because Senora Hall is going to mess up some words, and we're getting ready to go to choir competition, and we cannot afford to have these words wrong. Okay, I just want you to know. Wow. I wasn't even ashamed, but you doing student-led learning. And then you're looking at yourself and going, wow. And they will come to class different, just like my African songs. I had a student who wasn't in my class, but she was from Nigeria, and another cut, and I had other students close going to Benin. They're from Benin. I'm sorry, from Benin. She came in and she taught Tutakwenda. And when I would say something wrong, they say, please go get her because Miss Hall's about to talk again. And so, but that child, what happened was that child was so valued. And not only that, he asked me to pull up a map on my Promethean board to show the students where she lived.
From. Yes.
And when she did, she says, now I do want you to know surrounding countries, we do not all speak the same language. So guess what? Social studies got incorporated. Look at multicultural language. So look what, Brett, oh my gosh.
Well, what you did, and the music does this the best, right, is that when you introduce a culture, it opens the doors for other cultures to be welcome in, right? And a lot of you have said that already.
Yes.
And music does that the best. There's nobody who does it better than music of being welcoming in our classrooms and our ensembles.
I was honored. I was honored to tell Francis's students at District. I played flute with his choir, and myself and Kenel and Francis told them that 41 years ago, it was this building that connected us.
That's right.
Hi, James, 41 years ago, we met each other, and it was music that connected. Those kids got quiet. They said, what? I said, yes. I said, what we're doing is more than just teaching you how to sing, how to comprehend. We're showing you that there's an art form out there that will connect you for the rest of your life.
That's right. That's right. And what Juanita did not say is that when you have a student who's doing something student-led, because I encounter a lot of foreign exchange students, and when they, like right now, we're preparing for District Honor Chorus, and we're doing a language, I think, no, matter of fact, I know it's in German, and I happen to have one who's very fluent in German. My students will say, Mr. Francis, that's not how it's done, because Asha said this. And I have to sit down and say, okay. You know, and they're waiting for you to make that mistake. And the icing on the cake is, and you have the nerve to talk about us. You know?
You know what else that does? It shows the students that you are teachable.
Yes.
Right.
And it takes you from that throne, per se, and it puts you right in where they are.
You mean the teacher is teachable? Is that what you're saying, Park? The teacher is teachable.
Teachable.
Yes.
Look, I'm gonna go ahead and say, because anyone who knows me knows that technology and I are not buddies. We're not acquaintances. So I sit back and learn. So when we went virtual, and the kids will say, Ms. Francis, blah, 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 blah. I said, look, you know that old saying, you can't teach a new dog new tricks? I said, well, we're gonna flip that around. This old dog's learning some new tricks. And, you know, I get to the point where, because they held me too much where, oh, let's do this for you, Mr. Francis, because you're too slow. And yes, you know, when I type, I pluck F-R-A, backspace, because I messed up by the time. And I'm not shamed, but I show them I'm willing to learn. Because if anyone ever says they know everything, they're a fool.
Right.
You know?
I want to share a story with Kenel. I want you to remember this. When I first started teaching about 25 years ago, my first job was band. Juanita, we're going to relate to you. I did band, and then I had to do a choir program, which was try to revitalize a dead choir program that hadn't been in existence for years. And I had started with 5 students. So of course the band person in me was, we're going to read, right? We're going to learn how to rhythms and clap, and, you know, good boys do fine always, and all of those things. And those students were so resistant for weeks and weeks. We didn't like each other. The kids hated music. And then my friend Kenel pulled me aside because he was a hired accompanist with the school. And he said, "Hey, have you ever seen the movie Sister Act 2?" I said, "No, I don't think so." He goes, "Well, let's watch it." So
Yeah.
I had watched Sister Act 2. And then what he was really telling me was find, and what you guys are saying was meet the kids where they are.
At their level.
And then the kids
Yeah.
didn't know the movie, but at least that was the music and the styles that they were accustomed to.
Right.
And they were instantly hooked. So of course, right, we started doing music in Sister Act 2, which led to Broadway musicals. And then I was able to introduce classical genre, and they absolutely loved it because they were grown into it and they were already bought in to what we were doing musically. And we had grown the choir program. We were trying to be, inclusive with the music and all that. So my brother Kenel, I thank you for that experience. And it was so delicate at the time that I didn't know what he was pushing me to do. And then that led to, and in Square, I want to get your opinion on this as well, even though you're not traditionally a choir teacher. And to kind of wrap this up here, going back to our young or our newer emerging teachers who, I guess two things here. How do I, if I know gospel and I want to incorporate it in my teaching, but I'm scared to do it? We've kind of answered that. But the second part is, what if I want to introduce it, but I really don't know the style, right? I like it, but I don't know the style. And I'm afraid that I'll be judged differently because maybe I'm teaching it wrong, or those assessment judges are going to, right, look down on me or give me bad scores because of the style that is in. Well, what do I do with that? What kind of resources do I need and access to start the process of that?
Brett, if you look on the screen here and anybody that's viewing, you said the word resources. I would contact all the folks here. Don't contact me. You hear me in my speech patterns. It sounds more like Southwest Mississippi. But if you want to talk about finding context clues, and we've said that keyword text so many times, and in vocal music, text is so important. Where does it come from? What does it mean? And then how do we dress that up with what we know as far as pitches and rhythms? It's like putting up a Christmas tree. You put up the ornaments first, or do you put up the tree and then dress? So that context has to be going to the text first. And like Juanita said, if you've got to bring in some scripture passages, there are correct ways to do that to approach your administrators, because you don't want to get in a situation where it's seen that you're being an evangelist, that you're trying to win souls for Christ, or whoever your hire maker is. What you want to do is make sure that there's some contextual resource that will permeate your teaching. How are we going to pronounce this? What do these rhythms mean? What do we emphasize? Is because that gets it over to your audience, whether it's 3 judges sitting at the top of an auditorium somewhere, but it's an auditorium full of folks that just want to come and hear your choir, or maybe their teacher said, we have a field trip and you're going to sit there, you're going to listen to 5 or 6 different choirs. Wouldn't it be great if one of the choirs that they remembered, and they're singing your songs when they leave that auditorium, and they go back and they ask that teacher of theirs, can we do that? How can we do that? And then you get in touch with our resourceful people here on the screen. And if not one of them, Lord knows, they know who to reach out and get somebody in there with those resources for you.
So if I'm a young teacher, right, and Francis, Sasha, Clark, please answer this. I have a Moses Hogan tune in my library, right? And I want my kids and I want myself to be introduced to it, but I'm not sure. I think myself that I have to teach it different because I'm classically trained and I don't know how to teach gospel music. What would be the answer to somebody who would maybe think about that in fear of teaching it because they think teaching gospel is different than teaching classical?
It's not that different at all, actually.
Actually, what you need to just do, people need to understand that music is music and your approach to it is the same. It's not, because I have several colleagues of mine who ask me to go hey, can you listen to my group? Because they're doing a spiritual or a gospel. Now, how do we do this? Because I don't want to sound like, oh, I can't repeat the words they say, but you know, I don't want to sound, I want to do it right. In other terms, I want to do it correctly. And first, you've got to trust yourself. And I always tell my students, good musicians are always listening. Y'all, with today's technology, you have a plethora of resources. They have college choirs. You can go online and look up the composer, and they'll give you examples and videos of how their music, they want their music done. A lot of them will give you a preface, like the piece I gave you, Juanita, Bon Seaba.
Yes,
You
that's
know,
how I got it from France.
they'll give you the origin, the language,
I mean,
and what does it mean? Again,
Yes.
going back to the text. And I keep saying this, there is so much. Don't be afraid to reach out and call a colleague. Because I still remember Juanita and I, our first gig together was at the cathedral, where they were very traditional.
Very.
And Juanita had the nerve to say, boy, you better come here prepared because you know they don't play that stuff.
Well, and what happened was a bride's vocalist got sick before the wedding. She calls the USL office and I pick up the phone. She said, "Are you Juanita Marshall?" I said, "Yes." "Oh, my singer's sick. I need you to come." She said, "You sing, can you do the Ave Maria Latin?" I said, "No, but I know somebody who can. You just hold on, let me get it." I said, "Sybil, call Francis and get him right now. Tell him, come on, because you know people don't play. You need to come on." And I played flute. I said, "Francis, I am not singing because you know I'm going to take it down a notch or two." I said, "Not me, Francis. You know how to handle this." I said, "Ma'am," I said, "Beautiful. I'm going to play flute for you." She said, "Thank you, Juanita, and thank you." And we showed up together. And yes, you know, we knew what was, you know, accepted and not accepted, you know, there. And we did that. And again, it was somebody's wedding, but we did it. But we were able to balance that. We was able to balance. But Brett, we are a resource. We are a resource. And they can call. I am right now mentoring a young lady from Atlanta, Georgia, because I was asked to do it because she's teaching in the same demographics that I taught in. And she's going through that right now. She's trying to you know, understand that student body. She said, "I'm from Alabama, you know, and I'm just trying to understand this student body I'm dealing with in vocal music." And I'm mentoring and I'm talking to her. But we are a resource. If somebody wants to know how to start, where to start, we can do that. We can help them out. If they just reach out, we're just a phone call away. What if they're a local school? If they say, "Well, Miss Hall, can you come and sit in my classroom, or can you see what I'm doing? Can you come listen to what I'm doing? Can you come and do that?" We just want to be able to be a resource and help them to cross that. We want to help them cross that bridge. And that I'm not, you know, and I'm not the only retired teacher. There are other retired teachers that I can reach out to and be able to say, "Hey, you want to come with me?" We want to encourage an educator in the classroom. She wants to incorporate gospel music. She wants to have this, "Hey, how about we go together and we become not only a resource, but a camaraderie for that person."
Right. And then when introducing gospel music, take baby steps, like Clark mentioned earlier. Do a traditional spiritual. Explain to them the journey of the spiritual. You know?
That's great advice, Francis.
Then come back and take what they're doing now, what they're singing in church, and said, okay, because Clark, Kenel, and Juanita can share with you, we do that all the time.
All the
Because
time.
we're trying to get a hold and reach the mass. You have to get the older folks and reach the young people. Hey, young people, this will start off very traditional. Then we'll do a Kirk Franklin, break it up and update it and show them, because they're really into the beat. We're reaching these young folks. You know, they have these college universities, well, these university choirs are unbelievable.
Yes.
Doing the same traditional music, the close harmony, the diction, the dynamics, and you go, wow. So the resource is there.
Yes, they are.
And it doesn't have to be a complicated piece. Start it off simple.
Yes.
Hey, Clark, I see you trying to chime in, man. Go ahead.
Yeah, you mentioned Moses Hogan,
Yeah.
and of course, you know, his catalog of spiritual. There are resources out there. There are members of his chorale. He's deceased, but there are members of his chorale around the country who would be just excited and ecstatic that schools are doing this music, and they will be able to share stories. Moses Hogan that will help to bring that music to light for students. And he's just one of the composers. So the resources are out there. If you reach out to them, they will respond, because again, for them, it's like, wow, this music is yet living. And I can share my little information that I have regarding this music. So yes, the resources are definitely out there. As Francis said, YouTube is everybody's friend.
Yes,
Yeah.
it is.
You can, when we were coming along, Francis, Juanita, everybody, that was not the case.
That's correct.
It was a recording, you know, and that you
Yes.
put down. You can see it, you can hear it, you can actually feel passion from the faces. So all of that is there. Utilize it to your advantage.
Before we kind of go around the horn, I want to ask you guys just one personal question, and just kind of end it with some, and think of it right now. If you weren't stranded on a desert island and you only had two of your favorite gospel artists to listen to, who would those be? And I know that's hard, right? When people say, what's your favorite song? Oh my goodness, I have so many favorites. It's hard to narrow that down. But I want you guys to think about that. And educators on the screen right now listening, I want you to kind of think of a theme here. And we've mentioned a few words like risk, taking risk, and fear. To me, what I'm hearing right now is that those two words are minor to what you need to be doing, or what shall think about doing, is introducing your students to music that they would like to perform, that they would like to listen to, that might interest them, right? And so that you can open those doors and windows so that other music can be brought into your room. So don't be scared, don't be fearful, reach out, take the risk. If you don't know something, call somebody, because your students and yourself will be better enriched for it. You will be a more well-rounded educator, and your students will be well-rounded musicians. So if I could put this whole session in a bow and wrap that up and give it to you, that's the thing that I would do there. So Mr. James Square, have you thought about it? Have you written it down? Top two or one favorite gospel music artist that you would like to share with everybody? They have to have this on their playlist.
Okay, all right. So he's not necessarily just pure gospel, but he's cross-dimensional. I would say Roderick Dixon. And what I want you to listen to is look up Roderick Dixon. He's one of the gentlemen that sings in the Three Mo Tenors.
Yes.
Listen to him sing his medley of I Dreamed a Dream from Les Miserables, and he ends with The Impossible Dream from Man of La Mancha. Now, neither of those have anything to do with the spiritual, but boy, it will rip you apart here at your heart. So that I would say Mr. Dixon.
All right, Miss Juanita Hall, favorite two, favorite one, give it to us.
Wow. I'll just give you one for right now. Order My Steps, The Women of Wisdom.
Glenn Burley, yes.
Order My Steps. Many times when I walked into school, I had to sing it, walking out of my car into the Lord order.
Yeah, absolutely. Was introduced to that few years ago. That's life changing when you
Right.
witness that. Mr. Francis LeBlanc.
I would have to say the late, great Walter Hawkins and his song, A Change. Because at that moment, I made a change. It brought me to a closer spirituality. And again, introduced me to something I did not know. And I've been playing in the church for 51 years now. And when I heard that song and Miss Sylvia playing is like, that changed me. So I would say Walter Hawkins and A Change.
I've heard you mention that before. Sasha Massey, what would your go-to be?
Well, one song by a particular artist that I used to literally get up and do cardio to every morning, and it was like mental armor for me, was a piece called God's Got a Blessing by Norman Hutchins.
Yes.
With your name on it.
Yeah.
And another one I super like that it was mentioned by a priest, like a white Catholic priest. He talks about an old song, God has smiled on me.
Yes.
So I can't call the name of the preacher that was singing it, but like,
Can you
that
sing a little
one.
bit more? Can you sing a little bit more? Just keep going.
He has set me free. Yeah. So that for sure.
Good Lord.
Wow. Kenel Williams.
Well, you know, on this island, I have two of my all-time favorites. Number one would have to be Andre Crouch.
I know that
Yeah.
about you. Yes, sir.
I chose him. I choose him because he's the only artist that I know of that bridged so many cultures together. Nobody has ever done that but him. And the second one would be Richard Smallwood.
Yes.
Well, if you know Andre Crouch, he was the only man of color who was featured in the Gaither vocal band.
That's right.
Yeah.
Sorry to
And
interrupt you.
remember, both of them are classically trained.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yes.
So, Kendall, go ahead. You had Andre, Richard Smallwood, and did you have a third, or you were Richard was your second?
No, that's it.
Okay. Clark, before we get to you, I'm going to share my three, and just all the people in this room, just the influence of helping me know what this genre is. Yolanda Adams would be one of mine. Hearing her maybe for the first time sing at the Grammys, this was many years ago, and seeing traditional pop musicians with their eyes wide open because they probably had never heard anything like that live before, was life-changing for them and life-changing for me. Donnie McClurkin is one of my all-time favorites. Just his personal story, the passion that comes out of his mouth is unbelievable, and just very, very tuneful songs. You can sing along to it. They're memorable. And then I'm going to give a third because I'm the moderator here. I can go ahead and say three because I have special permission. And this is a good one for me. If you're talking YouTube, you're talking mixture of all the genres. The Aeolians, the choir led by
That's who I was referring
Jason
to.
Ferdinand.
Yes,
If you have not
indeed.
heard this group, they can sing it all. You need to go, and that will be on your playlist instantly. And my goal is to have them live in LMEA at some point. So that would be my third. Kendall, you had something?
Yeah, and that group can shift gears.
Yes.
Yes. It is amazing. And that's not normal to do something like that. So you can see why I give that three, because I think that was important and something kind of new. All right, Clark, man, give us your take.
Okay, speaking of the Aeolians and Max Ferdinand, he is no longer with the Aeolians.
Oh, you're kidding me. I didn't know that.
He has taken a college, he's at University of Maryland, so he has now formed his own group called the Max Ferdinand Singers.
Oh, okay, I didn't know that.
Yeah.
Who's with the Aeolians now? Clark Joseph?
I don't know who's with the Aeolians, but whoever is there, they have some large shoes.
Oh, yes, indeed. Oh, my.
Amazing.
Yeah. My top two, Kenel has already said one, Richard Smallwood. My go-to piece from him, of course, is Total Praise.
Yeah.
I think for the musician, for the worshiper, for the gospel artist, it just says everything that we want to say in that one song. And then he ends it with the sevenfold Amen.
Yes.
At the end, which
Very traditional.
it is so. So it's just like it is the book in one song.
Yeah.
Right.
Richard Smallwood would definitely be my top, and then my second one would be Donald Lawrence. Donald Lawrence is similar to Richard Smallwood in that he's classically trained, but he's also a theater person. So he writes from that perspective as well. One of the songs that is my go-to for him is called Jehovah Sabaoth. And that song speaks of that passage of scripture that says, I shall not fear the arrow by night, nor the terror by day, the God who covers me. And it goes through that whole thing. It's just, it's like a great benediction song. So those would be my two, Richard Smallwood and Donald Lawrence.
And then benediction, that's a great word for us to close out, right?
Yeah.
So for all our friends out there, you've once again, you hear the passion in these teachers. They live it, they breathe it every day, not just gospel music, right? They're really interested in you becoming more exposed, open the doors to different things, different ideas that you may not have experienced to, and it's going to open up emotion in your students. We want you to go to lmeamusic.org. We have so many other 12 for 12s that you can latch on to with certain things as social emotional learning, more diversity programming, professional development opportunities for you in all genres and all divisions of music. My friends on the screen, thank you so much for being here and taking the time out. Hey, let's do this again. We need to have a part 2 of this because I feel like this could go on and on and on.
Yeah.
Yes.
So thank you so much for being here, everybody. May your rest of the year be fruitful and enjoyable. Thank you so much.
And same to you. Thank you.
Amen.
Come on.
Amen.